basis of your attempt, and repeat sentence contributes to your speaking and listening skills. Why listening? Because students, you need to listen to the audio and repeat it. So obviously your speaking and listening skills come into picture in this case. So the score is based on content, oral fluency, and pronunciation. Now, what about content? Well, the scoring is done on a range of 0 to 3, so 3 being the maximum score. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you are able to repeat every word and in the correct order, that means you get a maximum for your content. What about fluency and pronunciation? As I mentioned earlier also, fluency is the ability to go on speaking without the unnatural hesitation and avoid the choppiness in your tone. Pronunciation is obviously the stress and intonation patterns along with voice modulation. So you need to keep all of this in mind in order to make sure that you're getting the maximum score. Well, let's move ahead. Now that we have understood the scoring, we are going to look at some strategies that can help you to deal with this question type. So let's understand the scoring for this question type so that you can incorporate all the skills that you are being tested on in order to get the maximum score. Remember, students, that you get a partial credit based on the task that you attempt, and repeat sentence contributes to your speaking and listening skills. Why listening? Because you need to listen to the audio and then repeat the sentence. So obviously it contributes to these two skills. Where the score is based on content, oral fluency, and pronunciation. The maximum score for the content is 3 and the minimum being 0. Oral fluency is rated on a scale of 0 to 5, and so is the pronunciation, that is 0 to 5 for the pronunciation aspect as well. And these are the 3 traits that are being tested as far as this task is concerned. Now let's move ahead and understand the scoring a little bit in detail, because until and unless you know what you are being judged on or what contributes to a maximum score or what negatively impacts your score, you will not be able to do the right things. So let's look at that. Well, the score is based on content, like I said, and the maximum score for content being 3. So let's understand the details of the scoring, because if you know what exactly impacts your score, you will be able to do the right things in the exam. So when we look at content, we know that it is going to be rated on a scale of 0 to 3. What exactly can impact your score in this area? Let's see that. If you make errors by replacing certain words or omitting some words that were mentioned in the track, or for that matter, adding a few words which were not mentioned in the track, that can impact your score in the area of content. Any kind of hesitations, filled or unfilled pauses, they would be ignored. The words should be correct as far as the content is concerned. When you speak all the words in the correct sequence, you get a maximum of 3 points. If you speak 50% of the words in the correct sequence, you get a 2, and in case less than 50% of the words are mentioned in the correct sequence, you get a 1 score. Almost nothing from the prompt, in that case you get a 0. Now what about fluency? Well, oral fluency is judged on a scale of 0 to 5. You get a 5 if you speak like natives, that means you speak like the regular speakers of English. However, if your speech is intermediate, you get a 2. In case it is limited, in that case you get a 1. For the advanced speakers, it is 4 and 3 for the good ones. Well, what about pronunciation? Pronunciation is rated on a scale of 0 to 5. When you sound like natives, you get a 5 on that one, and in case it is like an advanced speaker of English language, then it is a 4, 3 for the good speakers and 2 for the intermediate. If it is intrusive, which means that people cannot understand what word you have spoken, then in that case it is judged as intrusive. In that case it is a 1 score. For non-English, it is C. Well, I'll give you an example of intrusive. Now let's say, for example, let me share an example as far as intrusive is concerned. Now let's say, for example, the word that was spoken out in the audio was cartoon, but you mentioned cartoon. Now, if it is mentioned as cartoon, it means something else altogether. It is intrusive. People cannot understand what exactly was said and how it fitted into the context. So that would be intrusive. Okay, students, now that you know how the scoring is done for this question type, let's look at a few strategies that can help you to score the maximum marks on this one. So first and foremost, you need to speak clearly and at a normal pace. Now, what exactly does that mean? Which means that you should not rush through. You should speak at a normal rate. Neither too fast nor too slow. Additionally, you need to ensure that you're not mumbling in your mouth. Your words should come out very clearly and should be understandable. Well, it should be loud and clear and should be fluent as well. So fluency, what does that mean? Well, fluency means that there should be no choppiness in your tone, and you should try to bring about a natural flow in your speech. Well, stay calm and speak as much as you remember. Students, here I would like to give you one very important tip, that don't waste your time correcting yourself. That means don't do self-correction, or don't worry too much about the because there are only 15 seconds to record your response and you should not waste your time correcting yourself. So just go ahead and record your response before the progress bar reaches the extreme right end. Well, now try to speak as much as you can remember. So this task is more about memorizing the statement and repeating it the way you heard it. So speak as soon as the recording finishes because there is no beep sound in this task. So for some of the tasks you tend to hear the short beep after which you will need to record. However, for this task there is no beep sound and you must start recording the answer as soon as the audio stops. Complete the task before the timer runs out. That means before the progress bar reaches the extreme right end, you must complete your response. And the mic goes off if you are silent for more than 3 seconds. That's important to remember. I'm reminding you time and again that the moment you are silent for more than 3 seconds, your mic will go off and you will not be recorded. So in that case, you will be given a 0 on that response. Well, that's about the strategies. Now let's see how to implement these strategies and be able to ace up this question time. Okay, so now let's look at one question of this kind and let's see how to address this question. So the task prompt would say that you will hear a sentence. Please repeat the sentence exactly as you hear it. You will hear the sentence only once. So remember that students, you will only hear the recording once and you will not be able to hear it again. So focus on the important phrases in the sentence. So this task, as I mentioned earlier also, it is more about memorizing and repeating the sentence. So now that we have understood the strategies, let's try to implement in one of the examples here. So I'm going to demonstrate to you how to do this task. So this is what you see on the screen. You will hear a sentence. Please repeat the sentence exactly as you hear it. What does that mean? That instruction means that you need to repeat the sentence in the same way as you heard it. And remember that you need to use the same word order that you heard in the sentence. Apart from that, students, try to copy the stress and intonation patterns of the speaker. Well, you will hear a sentence only once, which means that the recording will not be repeated. So before we proceed ahead to listen to the recording or the audio, let's first understand that what does the screen show you. It's very important for you all as test takers to understand when to start recording your response. So initially, when the audio is playing, the status is playing on the screen, which means that you can see a blue bar progressing to the right end. The moment the audio is complete, the status will change from playing to completed, and you will see a blue bar reaching towards the right end. And immediately you need to start recording your response, students, because there will be no short beep before recording. So as soon as the audio stops, you need to start recording, and you can see the status as recording. You will see that the progress bar is moving ahead, so you can see the blue bar filling up, and you have to complete speaking your response before it reaches the extreme right end. And then the status will change to completed, which means that the scoring, it's not just a 0 or a 1, it will, that's the sequence, the word sequence. The next one is has developed a new strategy, and the third important phrase here is for the project. So these are the 3 important phrases, right? That is what you need to remember here. Okay, so our team has developed a new strategy for the project. The moment, now this is about memorizing the phrases that were important in the sentence. So we'll break it into small chunks and that will help you to understand how to repeat it. Apart from that, another thing that we need to focus on is the fluency and the pronunciation. Now fluency indicates the natural rate of speech, so don't rush through. It should be neither too fast nor too slow. And what did I tell you about intonation patterns? Well, the moment you start your sentence, your intonation patterns should rise. And the moment you end your sentence, your intonation patterns should fall. Now that is something very important that you need to keep in mind. Look at the arrows. I'm telling you about the intonation patterns with the help of the arrows, students. So now practice speaking this out. Quickly start practice speaking this out using the intonation patterns here. Now the moment we look at this sentence, there are a few things that you need to be stressing. Our team, what is it talking about? Well, it's talking about our team. So you try to emphasize on the word team. The speaker also did that. It has developed a new strategy for the project. So for the project. So project again is getting emphasized. However, the intonation patterns are going to fall here. So remember to follow these intonation patterns and also try to imitate and listen carefully for how the speaker mentioned that. So remember to follow the same word order, because if you change the word order, your score is going to get compromised, students, in the area of content, and you certainly don't want that happening. Isn't that so? You want a maximum score when it comes to the question. And there are loads of questions of this kind, so try to practice enough. So first of all, try to understand from the prompt that who is the sentence talking about and what does it say, and that will certainly help you to memorize. Right, everyone? So let's look at another example, and I'm going to help you understand how to do this one again. So let's look at another example. I'm going to demonstrate once again on how to do this task, but this time round, do try along with me. When you listen to the recording, you must just try to memorize what the recording said and try to repeat it from your end, and just see how well you did this one. But focus on the important phrases that are being said in the sentence. Try to understand what is the sentence talking about, or who is it talking about, and what does it say. Remember to speak out the sentence in the same order as was mentioned in the sentence, exactly the way you heard it. Don't alter the word order, right? So here I am playing the audio recording. Focus and be attentive. Listen to this one. It's a very short prompt, and as soon as the audio stops, you need to repeat the sentence. That's how we're going to do that. But prior to that, a very quick reminder. of how the status looks like on the screen. So prior to that, let's see how the status looks like on the screen. So initially, when the audio is playing, the status will be playing. The moment the audio is complete, it will change to completed, and the blue bar you will see will reach to the extreme right. And immediately you have to start recording the response, and you can see that the status changes to recording. The moment the time is up, it says completed. It changes from recording to completed, and the blue bar reaches to the extreme right end. So within that time, you have to record your response. Remember that once the progress bar reaches the extreme right end, the mic will go off and you will not be able to record any further. Were you able to hear this clearly? Were you able to memorize this one? Can you repeat this sentence? Well, check it out from your end. Are you able to repeat the maximum words in this sentence? So now that you must have repeated the sentence, I'm going to play it once again so that you can check if you did that right. So I'm going to play this one.
Understanding global markets is crucial for business success.
Okay, for your benefit, I'm just going to write the sentence on the screen and check out your response and see if you have been able to record your response clearly and accurately. So well, this is the sentence. Understanding global markets is crucial for business success. Now that was the sentence. Well, students, how many of you got that right? That's important for you to understand that there were 3 important phrases in this particular sentence. Were you able to mention all the 3 important phrases, or did you miss out something from here? Was the word order correct? Did you follow the stress and intonation patterns clearly? Did you do all that correctly, students? That means, did you take care of your content, pronunciation, and oral fluency? Well, let's check it out, how to speak out the sentence. The speaker also used some stress and intonation patterns. You need to follow them. You need to repeat that exactly the way speaker said. So let's look at that. Again, a little guide on how to start your sentence. Well, I mentioned earlier also for the previous question that the moment you start your sentence, your intonation patterns should be high. That means it is a rising pattern that we follow. However, when we end the sentence, the intonation patterns should fall. And then you must stress on certain words to convey the right meaning. So here there were 3 important phrases. What were they? Well, understanding global markets. This is what the first phrase was. Is crucial was the second phrase, important phrase, for business success. Now, what was the sentence mainly talking about? It was talking about global markets, understanding global markets. So what about the global markets? Well, it is crucial. Understanding global markets is crucial. Why? Why is it crucial for business success? So these were the important phrases that you need to cover. So let's see how I would speak this response. Understanding global markets is crucial for business success. Did you notice that my voice was high when I started the sentence and I lowered down my pitch the moment I ended the sentence? Did you notice that my voice was high when I started the sentence and my pitch was low when I ended the sentence? So this is how you need to speak out the sentence following the same word order and the stress and intonation patterns. Well, I'm sure you will practice following these tips. Content. Well, the word order is incorrect to begin with. So obviously your score will be compromised. Secondly, there were some omissions in this sentence. I said, I bought some fruits, vegetables, repeated successfully. Follow the stress and intonation patterns of the speaker. That's very important because that will help you score well in your fluency as well as pronunciation. As far as the content goes, one thing that's critical to remember that the word order should be correct. So students, what do I mean by that? I'll just explain that again because that is critical as far as the scoring goes. So in response to this audio, if you say, I bought some vegetables, dry fruits and fruits. So now, what do you think? How will your response be rated in the area of content? Well, the word order is incorrect to begin with. So obviously your score will be compromised. Secondly, there were some omissions in this sentence. I said, I bought some fruits, vegetables and a carton full of dry fruits. I did not include the word carton full of, so obviously that was an omission. And I mentioned some fruits, however, I mentioned fruits alone. So students, do remember that any kind of omissions, replacements and insertions will negatively impact your score. So try to memorize the sentence the way it was mentioned in the audio. Now, what about stress and intonation patterns? Well, I gave you an amazing strategy to work on your stress and intonation patterns. First and foremost, try to stress on the words that hold special meaning. That means stress on the nouns. And additionally, how are you going to alter your intonation patterns? Well, the moment you start your sentence, your pitch should be high, and the moment you end your sentence, the pitch should be low. So that is all that you need to keep in mind while attempting this question. So on that note, we end this session, and happy learning. Bye-bye from my side. Area of pronunciation. So let's say, for example, the graph that's presented to you here is related to the sale of hamburgers. Now, in this case, so students, let me quote an example over here to make you understand that how you can get a 5 on 5 in your pronunciation. Let's say, for example, you have a graph on the screen related to the sale of hamburgers. It's a line graph. Now, if I have to, so students, let me quote an example here to make you understand about the pronunciation aspect. Right, so let's imagine that you have a graph on the screen, which is a line graph for the sale of hamburgers. So how would I start speaking? I would say that line draft presents information about the sale of hamburgers. Now, look at the pronunciation for hamburgers. Well, it is pronounced together, right? And the R in burgers is not prominent, right? However, if you are at an intermediate level, the way the person might pronounce it is hamburger, right? Now, what is that? Even though somebody can easily understand what you said, it's still not matching the pronunciation that a native speaker would ideally use, right? So in this case, you might just get a 2 out of 5 for your pronunciation. Moreover, a person at an intermediate level will not use the same rhythm and the voice modulation. So look at how I speak. I would raise my voice in the beginning of the sentence and then lower down my voice at the end of the sentence. So these are all pronunciation related aspects that you need to keep in mind, which means that you need to ensure that you are altering the pitch of your answer. That means that when you take care of your pronunciation, you must not only just pronounce the individual words correctly, you must also raise your voice when you are beginning a sentence, lower down your voice when you end the sentence, at the same time stress on certain words that carry specific meaning. So stress, intonation, voice modulation, pronunciation of words, all this comes under the pronunciation aspect, right? So you must make sure that you are taking care of all of this while you are speaking out your response. Let's move ahead. So now let's move ahead and we will look at the scoring for oral fluency, right? So oral fluency is also judged on the basis of 0 to 5. In case you ensure that your speech is smooth, effortless, and it is at a natural rate of speech, then certainly you tend to get a high score as far as your fluency is concerned. Along with that, you must make sure that there is a certain rhythm and the stress is smooth, there are no hesitations, no repetitions, and giving you a score, right? Well, now we're going to move ahead and look at the strategies of not be recorded any further comparison, or you can draw some relationships and you can mention that as your next detail, right? Lastly, conclude your topic by giving a gist of whatever you have mentioned above, right? So isn't that really a nice way to put across your answer? You know exactly what to say in your first, second, third lines and how to conclude, right? Let's move ahead and we are going to understand that how to paraphrase the topic, what all words to use, what vocabulary to put into use while paraphrasing the topic. So I'm going to exactly guide you on how to phrase out your response. The first sentence is a paraphrase of the question. Now, in this case, whether it is a bar chart or a line graph or a pie chart, table or a diagram, you can say that the line graph provides information or gives information, shows, illustrates, represents, depicts or compares. Compares you can only use in case several items are being compared, right? So this is how you can start your sentence, right? So I may just say that the line draft provides information about the sale of hamburgers in New York in the year 1990 from January to December. So what did I do here? I just put all the elements together of the question and I have phrased out my opening sentence of the question, right? To paraphrase the topic. Well, now next we're going to look at how to put together your sentence number 2, 3 and 4. That means how to compare and contrast, how to point out the details. Like I mentioned earlier that you can point out some specific features and do a comparison. That's a great way to observe the information. So in this case you can use vocabulary like the highest and the lowest, the maximum or the minimum, most, least. Look at the words here to do the comparison. So increase, decrease, right? Rise, drop, climb, fall, grow, decline. In case the data moves up and down, The bar chart or the line graph indicates that the data is moving up and down throughout the time period, then you can call it a fluctuation. Another word for this one, I'll just mention it here, is a variation, right? So that's another one. Then you can call the decline as a dip also, and you can use remain steady if you notice that the data does not change. That means the figures tend to remain the same throughout the period, or during a certain period they remain the same, then it is remain steady, stable, or unchanged, right? So these words or the vocabulary is going to help you out to use a variety in your answer, and of course it will help you to take care of your vocabulary, right? So now let's move ahead and let's look at how to conclude. Conclusions are also important because it is a rounding off point to your answer. So, well, the last line is going to be the conclusion, which you can mention as in conclusion, overall, to summarize, to recapitulate, lastly, finally, or I would like to conclude by saying that. Now, in case you see that the progress bar is moving ahead and is almost going to end, the time is going to end, then you can just use a very short phrase like in conclusion or overall. Overall would be a good phrase and a very quick one to give your conclusion. However, if you still have time, you can nicely say, I would like to conclude by saying that. Okay. So any of these, then you will use the words related to observation that you've made for the image. No, you would say additionally, moreover, furthermore. So these are the words that can help you to add more information. Like, let's say, moving on from line number 2 or to 3 or to 4, this is how you can add. Moreover, furthermore, in addition, additionally, likewise, on top of that. However, if in the next line you are doing a contrast, then you will not use the words related to additionally. Then you will use the words related to a contrast, right? So in that case, you're going to establish a contrast. Let's look at the words for emphasis first of all. When you're trying to lay emphasis on something specific, you would say clearly, especially, in particular, particularly, without a doubt. You can also use the word indubitably, importantly, most importantly, right? So I'll just put that here, most importantly. That's also a nice one. Okay. And when you want to set up a sequence of points, then you could say firstly, first of all, to start with, or you could say secondly, next, thirdly, fourthly, lastly, finally. So all these words can help you to set up a sequence, right? Now let's look at the condition, right? So conditions, in case you want to set up, you can use if, unless, on the condition, provided that, as long as, supposing, otherwise. For the contrast, well, contrasts are quite important as far as the sentence is, I'll do that again. So which are the words that are related to contrast? Well, they are however, although, nevertheless, in contrast, alternatively, on the other hand. On the one hand, on the other hand, these go together, right? Then you can also use on the contrary, right? So you can use nonetheless. So all these words are related to contrasts. Contrasts are very important because you will be picking up features like the highest and the lowest, maximum or minimum, most and the least. So certainly you will have to use these words in order to join together your ideas. Otherwise they will be jarring and out of place, right? So now we're going to move ahead and we're going to look at one of the example questions and we'll see how to deal with it. And for the example, I'm going to take up a line graph, right? So here we go. Okay. Now, what does the prompt say here? It says, look at the chart below in 25 seconds. Please speak into the microphone and describe in detail what the chart is showing. You will have 40 seconds to give your response. So now it's clearly telling you the preparation time here, so keep that in mind, and the speaking time is 40 seconds, within which you need to complete your response. Now, a quick reminder, how do we give our response? The structure is paraphrasing the topic in the first sentence. Then line number 2, 3 and 4 are going to be related to your details, and the last line is about conclusion, right? So the first step here is to make a quick observation of the question, right? So it says residents of America living in different regions, right? And on the x-axis, it shows millions, that means the figure in millions. And on the y-axis, it shows the years, right? So for how many years is the data provided to you? It is provided to us for 6 years, right, students? And on the y-axis, it tells us about the figure. And which regions are these? Which are the different regions listed out here? They are mentioned here in this particular box. So now we've made some observations here with regard to the question. We are also going to think about some possible synonyms for the keywords in the question. So what do you think students should we use in place of residents? Well, we could also mention the citizens of America, right? Citizens of America or the United States. United States of America, right? Or the USA, you can also write. And what about the word living? Well, I can also use the word residing. So look at this, we'll be able to paraphrase the topic very easily with the help of these synonyms. And how would I just mention my opening line? Let's try to do the paraphrase of the question. So I would say that the line diagram or the line graph illustrates the number of citizens of the USA residing in various continents from 2015 to 2020. That could be my opening line. I could also mention the regions if I want in order to take care of this element in detail, right? I've already mentioned about the regions. However, if I want to give the details in the opening line, I can include this information as well. As it is in my details, in sentence number 2, 3 and 4, I would be talking about all these areas and the related figures. Students, don't forget to quote the figures also, okay, later on in your details. First, we are trying to think about a possible opening line, right? So that's how you can phrase out your opening line. Now the next step is to make quick observations with regard to the data, because now we want to think about the details, sentence number 2, 3 and 4. So when we look at this particular question, we easily notice that, well, the total figures have certainly gone up. Isn't that so? From 32 million to about 52 million, right? And when we look at the screen line, it indicates the other regions. This one hasn't gone up, rather, with the minor fluctuations, the figure has remained the same. Isn't that so? For 20 million, it began at 20, it has ended at 20. What about the purple line? It indicates Asia. So this one began at 10 million and ended close to about a 30 million, which means that it has increased. Isn't that so? What about Australia? Well, Australia, if we compare it to the other regions, if you notice, students, Australia's figures are the lowest. Isn't that so? Close to about a 4 million in the beginning of the time period, that is in 2015. And at the end of the period in 2020 was just about a 5 million. So the figure more or less remained unchanged in this one also. Now, another thing that comes to our mind here is that all these years are in the past. So we should try to give our answer in a simple past tense. Isn't that so? We need to take care of all these aspects, because remember, it's a productive skill. And when you're producing language, you need to ensure that you're using the correct grammar as well, right? Okay, so I've put that on the screen for you so that we can take care of that while we are speaking. And at the same time, you can also notice that when I finally give you the answer, I'm going to be using a simple past tense in the response. I will also try to quote some of this data here and do a comparison and contrast for my line number 2, 3 and 4. Okay, and finally I would give a conclusion. What is the conclusion? So when we look at this information, we can easily make out that the trend for the total figures as well as Asia is more or less the same, because both have an increasing trend. Isn't that so? Let me just point out here for you to pay attention to. So now let's look at an answer, a sample answer, while taking care of all these observations that we made on the screen. Remember, students, initially it may take you time to make these observations because you're still in the learning phase. However, when you practice over and over again in this manner, your brain will become trained and it will be able to observe or make observations of this kind very quickly. In fact, I've also given you lots of words and vocabulary to use in your opening sentence and in your details and conclusion. So that vocabulary is going to help you to come up with a response very quickly. So now listen carefully to the response. I'm going to speak out a response that takes care of all these observations. Plus, I'm going to be using a simple past tense while giving out my response. Additionally, I will also take care of the voice modulation and the stress and intonation patterns to take care of pronunciation. Plus, my speech is going to be at a normal pace, so there's going to be a natural rhythm and stress in my talk to take care of fluency. I'll also make use of some linking words and phrases so that there's nothing jarring and out of place. So all aspects will be taken care of, right? Plus, moreover, I'm going to ensure that all my elements are there so that the content aspect can also be taken care of, right? So listen to this one carefully. The line diagram illustrates the number of citizens of the USA in various continents from 2015 to 2020. The total number of American people living in other parts of the globe rose moderately from 32 million in 2011 to 52 million in 2015, and Asia had a similar rising trend. There were 20 million Americans residing in other parts, whereas Australia had the least number with approximately 4 million people in the year 2020. Overall, there was a gradual climb in the number of American people settled across the globe. So now, what about this one? Wasn't it a great response while taking care of all the elements of the question? Additionally, I took care of the pronunciation aspect as well as the fluency. So all these aspects can fetch me a high score on this response, and this is how I can structure my response without getting stressed once I have made observations with me and learn to practice how to give out numbers for the different types of attractions in Australia in 2015 here. First and foremost, what kind of a chart is this? Well, it is a pie chart. So let's put that here. And what are the various observations that you can make for the various elements? Well, the different types of attractions are listed here in the pie chart. They are the cinema, theme park, library, museum, and zoo. And against each type of attraction, they have mentioned the figures as well. The pie chart tends to give you figures in percent. But do you think, students, that you have to talk about the percent or the numbers in percentage as it is? 30%, 25%, 15%, 20%, 10%? Well, no, that will become very monotonous. To bring about a variety in your vocabulary, you can always replace them with alternative words. You can convert them into fractions, right? Or proportions. So you can also mention 30% as about 1/3. Why did I say about 1/3? That's because 33% is 1/3. However, this is less than 33%. So I'm going to talk about approximations. So I would mention here this as about 1/3, right? So I could say that, or I could say a little under 1/3, right? So under, above, or let's say approximately. These are various ways you can put across your numbers. Now 25%, what exactly is 25%? Well, it's also referred to as a quarter. Or you can also refer to it as 1/4. Right? So these are various ways to convert your percentage into fractions and proportions. 20% is 1/5. So let's make some quick observations. Now this one shows us the tourist preferences for various attractions. So which one was the most popular tourist attraction in 2015? Well, it was a cinema because it gives us a figure of 30%. Which one stood second, students? Well, the theme park with a figure of 25%. Which one was the third in position? Well, it was the museum with 20% figure. Students, which one was the least popular among tourists? Well, it was the zoo because the figure is 10% only. So this is how we can make observations about the information, and it will help us to do a comparison and contrast in the answer, right? And finally, we can give a concluding line to this one where we can just draw a gist of what we mentioned above, right? So now let's see what the answer could be in this case. So now that we have made observations for the question, we're going to think of possible synonyms to replace the keywords in the question. One of the keywords here in the question is tourist, right? So another word is type of attractions, okay? So we're going to think of possible words here and synonyms. Well, I can say travelers. I can also say explorers. So these are various words that I can use in place of tourists, right? I can use the word places of recreation. now that we have made observations with regard to the pie chart, we also need to think about the synonyms for the keywords in the question, that's tourist and attractions, right? So well, when it comes to tourist, we can replace it with the word travelers, or we can also call them explorers. As far as attractions is concerned, we can mention that as places of recreation, right? Or we can also mention this as places of leisure activity, right? So now let's think of a response that can satisfy the demand of the question. Not only do we need to take care of all the elements of the question, we also need to ensure that we are taking care of our pronunciation and fluency, right? Remember, you can get a 5 on 5 in the area of content if you are able to include all the elements of the task, right? Apart from that, in your fluency, you need to ensure that you are able to speak at a natural rate and there are no hesitations and unnecessary pauses. As far as pronunciation is concerned, you must ensure that you have stress and intonation patterns and voice modulation. So now that I'm going to speak out the response, notice all these features in my talk. Ensure that you're paying attention to all the aspects of my response here, whether it is raising my voice in the beginning of the sentence and lowering it down at the end of the sentence, stressing on certain words that carry specific meaning, especially the keywords from the question, at the same time highlighting the or stressing on the year or the figures that I'm going to quote here, right? Apart from that, I'm going to use number of linking words and phrases to link together my ideas so that I'm fluent as well, right? So here you go. The response is, the pie chart illustrates the proportion of Australian tourists who visited different places for recreation in the year 2015. From the pie chart, it is evident that the theatre was the most favoured location visited by 30% of the total travellers, followed by theme park at 25%. In the third place stood the museum with 1/5 of visitors. However, the zoo and library were the least preferred and visited by only a quarter of the total individuals. Overall, it is clear from the pie chart that the cinema was the most popular place to spend leisure time, whereas the zoo stood last, right? So now that was my response with a concluding line as well. It had a paraphrase to the question and some details subsequently added and a concluding line. So wasn't that a great way to structure the response, students? And once you make these kind of observations, it's going to be pretty easy for you because I have given you the relevant vocabulary for all the sentences in your response, but don't recording to make observations very quickly. However, if you have practiced enough, it certainly will be a cakewalk for you. But make sure that you are taking. So let's begin. And the time is up. Your speaking time would begin. Choppiness in your tone, accordingly. Well, you can have it to the north side of the 5 seconds or maybe phrase of the topic. The sentence number 2, 3 and 4 could be your details, and lastly you can include a conclusion. And then you must points related to this. It looks like this on the screen. Let's quickly look at the status bar. So it says beginning in 5 seconds or dash seconds, whatever number of. So when the countdown timer begins, the status bar looks like this. It says beginning in 5 seconds or maybe 10 seconds, whatever the time is left. But when the countdown timer is over, the status changes to recording and the progress bar starts moving ahead and turns blue. So this is when the mic opens up and you can start recording your response. And later when the time is over, the status bar changes to completed and you can see that the progress bar has completely turned blue and reached the extreme right end, right? So this is something that you need to keep in mind, students, because you should not record your response until the mic opens up, right? And the status changes to recording. So these are important things that you need to keep in mind. Now let's observe the question. The caption of this map says it's Westwood Hospital in 2010, right? The moment I look at the year 2010, I can make out that it is in the past, so I should use a simple past tense in order to give out this response. Why am I telling you all of this, students? Because grammar is very much a part of your speaking. You must ensure that the grammar rules are followed when you are giving out your response. So now we will take care of all the elements out here on the screen for the question, and it shows that there are about 2 blocks here, right, to the Westwood Hospital, and I can also notice very clearly that there is a compass that is displayed which gives me the directions of north, west, east, south. There seems to be one entrance right next to High Street. To the north side of the layout, there is this ICU, we have the emergency center, the specialty clinic, and the public car parking area. What is there in the southern part of the layout? So this is the south and this one is the north, right? So to the south of the layout, we have the cancer center, the surgery, waiting room, reception, cafeteria, and the park, right? So now, in order to make our response interesting and to showcase our skills and vocabulary, we must try to use the directions, and we should also use certain prepositions to indicate the location of all these features on the map. So when I talk about the emergency center, how can I talk about its location, students? I can say that it is next to the ICU or close to the ICU, or I could say adjacent to the ICU, right? So these are various words that can help me to tell the location of the emergency center, right? I'll just put that on the screen. Next to, close to, adjacent to, right? So now, what about the specialty clinic and the public car parking area? What can I say about that? I can also use the compass directions, like these seem to be in the east side of the hospital, right? To the east of the hospital. So I can mention that the specialty clinic and the public car parking area are in the east of the layout, to the east of the layout. So I could say to the east of, right? So remember that whenever you use directions like north, west, east, south, you tend to use the preposition of along with a direction. So please do remember that. These are important pointers with regard to grammar, so that you can construct your sentences in a grammatically correct manner. What about the southern part of the hospital? Well, there is this cancer center, and close to the cancer center or next to the cancer center or adjacent to the cancer center are the surgery and the waiting room, and next to that is the reception. So next to these is the reception and the cafeteria, and to the extreme right side of the layout is the park, right? I can also use my directions like right and left if I want to talk about the directions along with north, west, east, south. So isn't that really easy to make the quick observations here, right? So now how do we structure our response, students? Now clearly the structure requires you to paraphrase the topic, which means that is going to be your sentence number 1. Your sentence number 2, 3, and 4 are going to talk about the locations, the places, or you're going to talk I would like to include in my answer. And remember, I'm going to include all the elements so that I take care of the content, and I'll also do a comparison or maybe draw in the similarities, point out the features, and give the details. Apart from that, as far as my fluency is concerned, I'm going to ensure that there is a natural rate of speech and I'm not rushing through my response. Additionally, I will also make sure that I don't take unnecessary pauses and there's no choppiness in my tone. When it comes to pronunciation, I will ensure that when I start my sentence, I'm going to raise my pitch, and when I'm going to end my sentence, I'm going to lower down my pitch. In between, I may take a few pauses, meaningful pauses, wherever I think that hospital. While in the south, there was a cancer center, surgery, and waiting room. Reception, cafeteria, and park were also located in the southern part of the layout. So now I'm going to speak out the response. Pay attention. Okay, students, so here I go with my response and pay careful attention to it. The map illustrates the design of Westwood Hospital in 2010. There was a huge ICU, next to which was the emergency center. The department close to the emergency center was the specialty clinic, and there was a huge public car parking area. All these were in the north of the hospital, while in the south, there was a cancer center, surgery, and waiting room. There was also this reception, cafeteria, and the park. Overall, the hospital had all the major departments to accommodate patients. So well, that was a response with regard to this question, and if you notice clearly, I included all the elements of this map. At the same time, I ensured that my stress and intonation patterns, my pronunciation, and my fluency was taken care of, along with the fact that I used vocabulary related to the map, plus class, I also ensured that I use some linking words or the words of contrast in order to set up a contrast, because there was this north and the south direction, so I tried to use the word while, which indicates a contrast here, that these places were in the north, while in the south we had. So students, did you notice that I in observations with regard, you have your preparation timer. So the timer starts from 25 seconds, so that's the countdown timer, and the status says that it is beginning in 5 seconds or maybe beginning in 10 seconds. So it shows you the time that is left here. Then the moment the mic opens up, it says recording, and that's when you can start recording your response. And you can also see that the progress bar starts progressing ahead and turns blue. Okay, and this is what you and they are overlapping one long back legs. And for the toads also, we have a number of points here. Live on the land. What about some synonyms? The second point, it's saying slimy skin, bumpy skin. Now, what exactly is this? It's basically the skin texture. Isn't that so, students? It's a skin texture that it is talking about. And also listen carefully to the pronunciation. I said habitat, then I said texture. Okay, so this is also critical in your answer, the pronunciation. What about long back legs? The word back, how do we replace this word back here, back legs? Well, they can also be referred to as hind legs. So these are also called hind legs, right? Okay. So now these are points of differences, because they are mentioned to the extreme left and the extreme right end of the Venn diagram, right? So whenever we look at these points, these are the differences here. Okay, students, so now it's important to understand that the purpose of a Venn diagram is primarily to tell you the differences and the similarities. So always remember that the Venn diagram tells us about the differences and the similarities in the 2 or 3 elements that are being discussed in the diagram. Here there are only 2, that is frogs and toads. Now which ones are the differences and which ones are the similarities? Well, wherever the 2 circles overlap, those are the similarities. That is, those are the common points between the 2 categories, right? So I'll just put that here. These are the similarities. And the ones to the extreme left and the extreme right are the differences, right? Now remember, students, that all this I'm writing here for the purpose of your understanding. Obviously, you will not be able to do that much work on your erasable notebook in 25 seconds. So you should try to write a few important things on your erasable notebook to make your points, so that can help you to speak out a response finally when you are recording your response, right? However, keep your eyes on the diagram or the image that is displayed on the screen, because that's going to help you to make some quick observations, right? So now we have the similarities as they both are amphibians, egg-laying insects, right? And what are the differences? Frogs live in water, they have a slimy skin and long back legs. And the toads, on the other hand, have bumpy skin, they live on land, and they have short back legs, right? Now, whenever you are pointing out the differences and the similarities, there are some linking words that you ought to use. Now, students, whenever you're pointing out the differences and the similarities, your linking words are going to come into picture. So what are the words that indicate a contrast or a difference? Well, you can use words like on the one hand, but on the other hand, in contrast, on the contrary. So these are various words that can help you to establish a comparison, okay? So for similarities, you can use the words like they both have so-and-so features, or you could mention that they both are egg-laying amphibians and prefer to eat insects, right? So this is how you can point out the similarities. Now, let's see how to give a response with regard to this question. Now, this question is a Venn diagram, and we know very clearly that a Venn diagram's purpose is to talk about the differences and the similarities. We've also thought of some relevant vocabulary, like the word habitat, skin texture, hind legs. I'll try to use some of these in my response. And now, make sure that you pay attention to the linking words that I use while giving out the response. Ensure that you're paying attention to my stress and intonation patterns, my fluency, as well as the fact that I'm covering all the key elements of this question to take care of the content aspect. I'm going to structure my response by first opening up with the topic sentence, that means the paraphrase of the question, and then I'll move ahead with my sentence number 2, 3, and 4 to give the details, and finally a conclusion, right? And remember, one very important thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a simple present tense. Why is it so? Because here I am talking about the features of the 2 animals, right? So I will use a simple present tense in this case. So here you go, students. Pay careful attention to the response. The Venn diagram illustrates the differences between the characteristics of the frogs and toads, and also highlights their similar traits. The main characteristic feature of a frog is that it is a water animal, has a slimy skin, along with long hind legs. In contrast, the toad lives on land, has a bumpy skin texture, and short hind legs. However, the traits of both frogs and toads overlap, as they both are egg-laying amphibians and eat insects. Overall, it is clear that there are some similar traits seen in both frogs and toads, like their egg-laying capacity, followed by their preference to eat insects. However, there are also some major characteristic differences which set them apart. So well, students, that was a response that you can fit into your 40 seconds. So students, that was a good response with regard to this image. And you must have seen that I included all the elements and I took care of my fluency as well as pronunciation. Apart from that, you must have noticed that I used specific vocabulary related to this question type, and I also used some linking words to set up differences and similarities. So well, I am practicing students because describe image in a short time, your sentences. Only then the AI will be able to understand the ideas that you are expressing in your answer. Additionally, you must use complex and compound sentences to express yourself. Moreover, you must keep the right tense in mind. All these are very critical while you're speaking out your response. So keep these in mind and keep building your skills in these areas because that will help you to become more proficient and do well in your PTE exam. Use how to deal with this question type. So let's understand the details of this task. Okay, let's understand the details of this task. In this case, you will hear or watch a lecture and you will also hear a short beep or a tone after the lecture is over. Then you need to speak and record your response after you hear this beep. The length of the audio recording or the video would be just about 90 seconds, so it's not a very lengthy one. However, it can get quite challenging if you don't use the right strategies. After the recording is complete, you have 10 seconds to prepare, which means that after the audio prompt is complete, 10 seconds is the preparation timer, and then you have 40 seconds to respond to this question. There are 1 to 2 items in this one. Let's understand the scoring pattern. There is a partial credit awarded on the basis of the attempted response. Retell lecture contributes to your listening and speaking skills because you need to listen to an audio prompt and then respond to it. You are awarded partial credit on the basis of 3 parameters, which is content, pronunciation, and oral fluency. Now, in the area of content, you are given a score in the range of 0 to 5. For pronunciation and oral fluency also, it is 0 to 5. Now, what exactly does content mean? We need to understand that to be very clear so that we don't make mistakes. The content of your answer is judged by how thoroughly and accurately you convey the situation, characters, aspects, actions, and developments in the lecture. You need to describe the relationships, the possible developments, and the conclusion. So you need to bring out the main idea of the lecture very clearly. Along with that, you need to point out the details and finally to a conclusion as well. So this is what the content is all about. If you do all these things, students, you can get a 5 on 5 as far as the content is concerned. Now, what about pronunciation and oral fluency? Well, pronunciation means that you should use apt stress and intonation patterns, and you must also modulate your voice. So what does pronunciation mean, students? Pronunciation means that you must modulate your voice, you must use the stress and intonation patterns as well, along with, of course, pronouncing the individual words correctly. What is fluency? Well, you need to ask yourself that does my speech demonstrate a smooth, effortless, natural rate of speech? So that means that your speech should be neither too fast nor too slow. At the same time, you must use rhythm and stress patterns for the oral fluency along with some linking words to create a cohesion in your response. Which means that these linking words are going to help you to avoid any I'll do the fluency bit again. So what exactly is oral fluency? Well, you need to ask yourself that does my speech demonstrate a smooth, effortless, natural rate of speech, which means that your speech should neither be too fast nor too slow. At the same time, you need to avoid any kind of choppiness in your tone. So all these 3 parameters together are going to decide your score in retell lecture. Okay, let's understand a few tips and strategies that you need to keep in mind in case of this response. You will only be able to hear the audio once and it will play automatically. There may be a picture on the screen, and in this case, you must use that picture in order to predict what the lecture will be about. Students, make sure that you are taking your notes on the erasable notebook as you listen to the recording because it is a lecture and you might just forget some important things as you are listening to the recording. So your notes are going to help you later to put together a response. Speak clearly and at a normal pace. Do not rush. That means you should be neither too fast nor too slow. At a moderate pace. You should be speaking at a moderate pace. Complete the task before the time is up, and do remember that the mic goes off if you are silent for more than 3 seconds. So these important things that you need to keep in mind while responding to this question. Now, one tip that I would like to give you here is that as you are speaking, do not worry too much about the mistakes. Just stay calm and continue if you happen to make a mistake there. Because by self-correcting, not only will you be losing time, you will also be losing your points. So don't take unnecessary pauses or don't hesitate too much in the response. Don't keep self-correcting yourself, right? Another important point that I would like to bring to your notice that usually it is the artificial intelligence that is judging you for your responses throughout your PTE and scoring you. However, for some of the more complex type of questions in your PTE, the human expertise also comes into picture. Now, in this case, before your final score is given, the human experts will also be reviewing your response. So let's understand that what kind of a structure should you follow in order to respond to this question. The first sentence in your response is going to be the topic sentence. What exactly is a topic sentence, students? Well, it is the opening line which tells us the topic or the main idea of the entire lecture. And then you go ahead to construct your sentence number 2, 3, and 4, which would include your main ideas and your supporting details, right? So the last line has to be a concluding sentence which could help you to do a rounding off point. So now, students, let's understand the format of structuring your response. So the first sentence of your answer should be your topic sentence. What exactly is a topic sentence? Topic sentence is nothing but the main idea or the gist of the entire lecture. So the sentence basically tells us what the lecture is about. The subsequent sentence number 2, 3 and 4 is going to comprise of your main ideas and your supporting details. And the last line has to be your concluding sentence. So this will help you to give a nice, coherent, cohesive answer in the test. When you are constructing and complex sentences, instead jarring and out of place, right? So while the audio is playing, students, don't forget to take your notes on the erasable noteboard that's provided to you. Those notes are going to finally help you to construct your answer, and you'll be able to retell the lecture in your own words, right? So don't take long sentences as your notes. It's only words, a few words or phrases that you must take down on your noteboard. You must speak clearly and only record your response when the mic opens up, right? So let's move ahead. Now we're going to do a question in order to practice the strategies and the tips that I shared with you. Now, what does the question say here? It says, you will hear a lecture. After listening to the lecture in 10 seconds, please speak into the microphone and retell what you have just heard from the lecture in your own words. You will have 40 seconds to give your response. So what does this mean, students? You have 10 seconds to prepare and you have 40 seconds to respond, right? So 10 seconds, as I mentioned, can go off in a blink of an eye. So you must take down notes as the audio is playing. And those notes finally are going to help you to put together a response very quickly and record it in 40 seconds. Remember, your complex and compound sentences are going to help you to showcase your language skills. So don't construct short, simple sentences. They can be make use of complex and compound sentences while you're recording your response, and don't use just short, simple sentences. First, let's look at how the status bar looks like on the screen when the audio prompt is playing. And it says, the status says, when the mic, the audio
that support conservation efforts and emphasizes the need for sustainable, discusses the importance
on the paper, right? So grab a paper and a pen quickly and make some notes while you're listening to the audio. And here I go, I'm going to be playing the audio now.
In this lecture, the professor discusses the importance of biodiversity. He explains how various species contribute to ecosystem stability and the potential consequences of losing these species. The talk highlights recent studies that support conservation efforts and emphasizes the need for sustainable practices to protect our environment.
Okay, so did you understand the lecture, students? Were you able to make out what this lecture was about? So how should you take your notes? I would say that you should just take down points there and note down a short phrase or a word. So students, did you understand what the lecture was mainly about? And were you able to take down the notes on your notepad? In the exam, please don't forget to take your notes on the erasable noteboard. So you should also take down a few details that were mentioned, because you know that you need to structure your response by telling the topic of the lecture, then add a few details and supporting points, and finally a conclusion. So I have also taken down the notes, and I'm going to show you how I took the notes. So you can also try to make notes in a similar manner. So I'm just putting down my notes on the screen. So if you look at it, I have taken down only the important points, right? I have not taken down the helping words, right? Neither have I taken down the prepositions in the articles. My points include only the important phrases or the words that were mentioned in the lecture. Later, I can use my knowledge of grammar to string them together into a brief. Later, I can use my knowledge of grammar to string these points into sentences, right? And while I do so, I will certainly use linking words. And along with that, I'm going to use some order words also. Okay, students, so now let's do one question and let's see how to use those strategies and tips in order to solve this one. The question says, you will hear a lecture. After listening to the lecture in 10 seconds, please speak into the microphone and retell what you have just heard from the lecture in your own words. You will have 40 seconds to give your response. Now, students, let's quickly look at how the status bars look on the screen. When the audio prompt is playing, it says playing, right? And when the audio prompt gets completed, the status changes to completed, and you can notice that the progress bar has turned blue completely and reached the extreme right end. When the mic opens up after 10 seconds, the status changes to recording. And when the 40 seconds are over, that means your speaking time is over, it changes to completed, and the progress bar completely turns blue and reaches the extreme right end. So this is important to note on the screen so that you don't start recording before the mic opens up. Now I'm going to play a short audio. Listen to this one carefully and take your notes on the erasable noteboard in the exam. However, for now, you can grab a pen and a paper and make your notes. So listen very carefully. Here you go, students. I'm playing the audio.
In this lecture, the professor discusses the importance of biodiversity.
So here you go, listen carefully to this lecture.
In this lecture, the professor discusses the importance of biodiversity. He explains how various species contribute to ecosystem stability and the potential consequences of losing these species. The talk highlights recent studies that support conservation efforts and emphasizes the need for sustainable practices to protect our environment.
Okay, students, were you able to understand what this lecture was talking about? And were you able to take down the notes? We did hear words like importance of biodiversity. We also heard words like the concept that can save on the screen for conservation effort, nation patterns, ability of ecosystem to come up with a response in the stipulated time, and string together here is to take your notes while you're listening to the audio. So do practice enough for note taking as well. That's an important that you will primarily ensure that you're covering the main idea to raise your voice at the beginning of the sentence here, because 2 or 3 sentences of detail. Whenever I speak, I raise my voice when I start a sentence, and when I end the sentence, I lower down my pitch. That takes care of my intonation patterns. Additionally, I also stress on certain words that take care of the answer question. So let's begin. You get 10 seconds to respond, which means that you cannot afford to waste your time. You have to be very quick when you respond to the question. And usually, just a single word or a few words are enough in order to answer the question. You don't need to construct grammatically correct sentences to answer this one. And there are 5 to 6 items in this question type. Now I'm going to explain you the scoring for this one. There is no partial credit that is awarded here. So your answer is either correct or incorrect. Please note that there is no partial. So now let's understand the scoring for this question. Students, there is no partial credit applicable to this question type, so it's either correct or incorrect. The short answer question type contributes to your listening and speaking skills because you need to listen to the audio prompt and then respond to it. There is 1 mark for each correct answer and 0 for an incorrect one. Correct answer means an appropriate word or words are used in order to answer the audio prompt. Okay, and in case the inappropriate word is used, you don't get a mark for it. So well, we move further and understand the strategies or the tips that you need to keep in mind in order to answer this question. For this particular question, you get to hear the audio only once, and the audio starts automatically. Okay, a short beep or a tone early at a normal order to answer this question. Or that you might go frequently a particular task about a person. In case the question starts with where, that means it's talking about a when, because it's critical for you to understand when to start recording your response. So the is displayed on. So it clearly states that 1 or a few words are enough and turning blue. When the audio prompt, or let's take up one question, your audio prompt or your blue and for everyone, there is no short beep before your. So now I'm going to play the audio prompt, and you need to remember in your exam that as soon as the audio prompt gets over, you must record your response because there is no short beep, right? So here I'm going to play the audio for you.
What is the capital of France? It's...
Okay. So what did the question ask you? What is the capital of France? So now, what is the answer to this one? It is Paris, right? So what should I say in the mic? I don't have to construct a sentence. I don't have to say the capital of France is Paris. I just have to supply the word Paris. I would record Paris. Very clearly, I must speak in the mic. Very clearly, simple and easy. Well, now here it says you will hear a question. Please give a simple and short answer, often just 1 or a few words. It says either. Right? So well.
What is the largest ocean on Earth? It's the...
So what did the question ask you? What is the largest ocean on Earth? Right. So what's the answer to this one? Pacific Ocean, right? So I don't need to construct a long sentence that the largest ocean for a response, right? The short question. Speaking, whether it is repeat sentence, read aloud, retell lecture, describe image, or short answer questions, there is a next button at the bottom of the screen. You need to click on the next to move to the next question. And once you move to the next question, you cannot go back to the previous one. Another important thing that you need to remember is that all these questions are timed. So ensure that you are able to complete your response in the time that is allowed to you. On the right top corner of the screen, you will also be able to see the overall timer and the number of items left, right? So record your response when the mic opens up, and you should be able to see it on the screen that the